Good morning, everyone. I'm again with Dr. Robert Henderson, who is extremely knowledgeable on science and being, he's a radiologist at the USC. And if you watched his previous interviews, we talked about the simple act of washing your hands and the value of wearing masks. But today, I was with Dr. Henderson when it first broke, and we were in Prescott, and it was terrible, and then it subsided, and now it's terrible again. So I'm just going to ask a simple question. What have you learned, and explain the novel again for everyone that maybe been living underneath a rock. But we have a novel coronavirus, and 90 days later, I've seen a lot of things. We started out in Prescott, and now we're in Spokane. Wrap it up for us. What did you learn, and explain real briefly about COVID?
Well, I think what's most important is what we haven't yet learned about this virus. The virus was novel. That means there is no possibility of having a vaccine for a novel virus because it's never been encountered in the human population. So that's a very important distinction because the average vaccine takes about 4 years to develop. Trump wants to get reelected, so he wants it done today, and that's not going to happen. In fact, if it gets done before 2021 ends, I'll be surprised. So I think that people have to get used to the idea that they're going to have to be at least semi-isolated for at least another year, at least, maybe longer, because the early reopening has made it very clear that the CDC was correct, that too rapid an opening, and particularly having young people go to nightclubs and bars, is a sure way to spread the virus.
Well, let me ask you a quick question. If everyone was in seclusion right now for 6 months, let's just say, as an example, is it gone? Is the coronavirus is extinct? Is it over? Or when they come back out, it's going to recur? I mean...
Well, actually, since we don't have that experience, we don't know.
We don't know, yeah.
We don't know. There could be people with latent infections that could infect people 6 months after isolation. But there's no data, no experience to prove that. But we do know that a lot of people, particularly young, healthy people, can get the virus, not have symptoms, and spread it. We know that. That's what the CDC people call community spread. That is like the worst nightmare of infectious disease.
Because you can't test them. They're not going to test positive, right?
Well,
so
how do you select out of 339 million people? How do you select the people to test?
Well, you have to test everyone at that point.
Well, our federal government is against testing everybody because it makes them look bad and affects political findings.
It always comes down to politics and money. But the point is, I mean, it's like the more people we test, the more we find that are infected. So it's almost like,
Well, that's not the point of the testing. The point of the testing is you find an asymptomatic patient who tests positive, then you find out where they were. Did they go to a Trump rally? Did they go to a bar?
Well, does it matter where they got it? They have it.
Well, it matters because if they're asymptomatic and positive, they could have infected a whole bunch of people.
Well, that's contact tracing.
That's contact tracing. That's why it's so important, and that's why, and it basically will reveal more cases, and that's why politically it's a bad thing for the current administration. But what's
your solution? What would you, if you had the authority to help.
I think what you have to do is to have a measured drop in individual exposures through these plexiglass barriers and the spacing in the restaurants and the outdoor preference for eating and that sort of, all of that I do not see as a temporary fix. I think it's going to take a proven, effective, safe vaccine to really open this country up. And that probably is going to take more than a year from now, probably a year and a half or more.
That's scary for people to wrap their head around.
Yeah, and that's the new normal that everybody's talking about, and that's what's going to happen. Zoom is going to take off. You know, most of the talk shows are being conducted from the hosts' homes, and that may not change that much.
Well, it seems to be working. People are watching it. I mean, a big deal. They don't have to travel. You know, they're saving money in gasoline. It might save the environment a little bit. Everyone moving around.
Yeah, but
Working from home is a fantastic thing to do.
oh, absolutely. And this is going to be a real boost for the telemedicine and also the college course from home. I think once people get used to it, it will not be that much of a barrier. Now, I still think that there's no substitute for a terrific teacher who teaches you in person and answers your personal questions right away.
Right.
I mean, that's ideal, but I don't think we're going to see that again until we have a vaccine. I really don't.
I was at a winery the other day for a meeting to do a fundraiser. And I came up with the idea is you ship the wine and the goodies to everyone's home. And then when the fundraiser starts, it's a Zoom, it's virtual, and everyone opens up their wine at the same time and enjoys it with one another, but virtually, you know. So they love that idea. And of course, you have to think of outside the box because we can't gather in crowds anymore.
Glass of wine in each hand, you can't touch your face.
Exactly. So it's a whole new normal.
And I don't think it's going to change until there's a vaccine. I really don't. And I think they're trying to skirt away from that on the news, even the CDC people, because they don't want to frighten people. And it's frightening to consider that this is going to be what we're stuck with for
Years.
at least a year from now. Maybe.
Because they have to do blind studies, right? They have to do...
Well, the first study, the phase 1, is for safety. Okay, that's purely, you give it to a bunch of volunteers and see if it has any negative effects. Okay, that's phase 1.
You give the virus to them?
No.
No, you give the vaccine to them.
Give
These
the
are people that
vaccine.
are sick.
No,
These are people that are normal.
these are volunteers.
Okay.
You give it to volunteers and you make sure none of them get sick.
Well, wait a minute. You give them the vaccine without exposing them to the virus,
Correct.
just to see if the vaccine itself will give them
See if the
sick.
vaccine
Gotcha.
itself is safe.
Okay.
And then the next,
And how long do you have to do that for? Like 3 months?
well, it's
You test them 6 months?
the more people you have, the less time it takes, and so that's part of the trial part. If you get 10,000 people, you can find out really quick if it's safe.
Okay.
But typically, you don't get that many volunteers for a phase 1 trial.
Well, this is this is the new normal, so maybe you might get 100,000 people that would say, let's do this.
Yeah, but the one thing that they don't tell you is that if the vaccine is a virus-based vaccine, you have to make sure that that the vaccine's not infectious,
Right.
that it's parts of the virus, not the entire live virus. So once that is done, then you give it to people. Then you do antibody studies on them to see how much immunity they develop. And the next phase is to give it to a bunch of people, and you don't have to expose them purposely to the virus. You just have to keep track. That's when you start needing big numbers of people. So you put them out there in the community, and if nobody gets infected, and that's happened. HPV vaccine, for example, Merck did a study that it was 100% effective.
Mm.
That doesn't happen very often. But you find
SARS?
out,
How about SARS and MERS? Did they have?
well, actually the Oxford group is working with a vaccine that was developed for, I think, SARS, not MERS, but SARS. And they altered it to be more like the COVID-19 virus. And that makes a lot of sense, but it hasn't been proven effective yet. So you've got several steps, and the usual steps in the usual time frame is about 4 years. So getting it in a year and a half would be really,
First time.
yeah, it would actually be a first, yeah. But it's, this one,
But you got people all around the world, though. Every country is working on this, right? And hopefully they're sharing their data.
yeah, but all the best researchers in this field are in the United States and the United Kingdom. The best. Italians have some, people working on it, but if you want an effective vaccine developed, the UK or the United States are the places that are most likely to do it, and that's because they have the infrastructure.
Right.
And a lot of this stuff on coronavirus was developed when they were fighting Ebola, SARS, MERS. SARS and MERS are coronaviruses. Ebola, I'm not sure about, but the Ebola effort was successful, and a large part of that was from the U.S. scientists that went over there, and they were doing what you were talking about. They're putting on full gowns, gloves, gowns, masks, head scarves for every patient they saw.
That was amazing. It looks like
just,
you're in a radioactive.
And you're right. You
Yeah.
have to take it off exactly right to keep it from contaminating.
Slow motion, and drop it.
Motion, drop it down.
It was like
And then
amazing to watch.
torch it, or whatever you have to
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
Yeah, it was.
It looked like a radiation, like you're protecting yourself from radiation. That's what the feeling I got from it when watching that
Yeah,
process.
I think if you were watching the guys that were trying to clean up Fukushima after Fukushima or
Yep.
after Chernobyl,
Yep.
you'd see the similar kind
Exactly.
of fear. Very similar.
Very similar, and that was really shocking to see it like that. I was shocked.
Well, the thing is that the radiation in those plants, those nuclear plants, the radiation itself will not hurt you unless you get it on your hands. Ironically, your hands, because of the grooves and the fingerprints and all that, you can't clean it that well. But if it never gets on your hands, then it decays. It might have 100-year half-life, or even longer in some of the isotopes. But if it's only on your gloves and your gown and you're careful about taking it off, then it won't get on your skin where it's almost impossible to get off, and it will decay on your fingers or your hands, and it has 100-year half-life. So who's going to win? The isotope or you?
Yeah. And you're a radiologist.
Yeah, I've done a lot of work with radiation.
So you kind of know what radiation is.
Yeah, it's something to be reckoned with, and you can't be casual about it. But the coronavirus has some real similarities between radiation, and because if you're not careful, a simple contamination.
And one molecule too, right? Is all you need is one?
Well, I mean, it's...
What do you think?
Well, the concept of inoculum is an old concept, and it's basically that if you're exposed to a little bit of virus, you have a little bit of risk. If you get a big exposure, somebody sneezes right next to you or something, then you have a big inoculum, and you not only have a bigger risk of getting the virus, you have a bigger risk of getting a severe case. And see, we haven't even addressed all those things because it's new. We don't know exactly what we're dealing with, but we do know that there are some special problems with the patients who get it. They get a coagulopathy, which means that they clot in the blood vessels, and it can be both arterial, which can cause you to, get an amputation or something, and venous. And so that's being studied very carefully, because when or if to give anticoagulants to those people with severe cases. It's a very tricky disease too, from the standpoint of lung function, because ARDS has adult respiratory distress syndrome has a lot of causes, tons of causes. Anything from severe allergy to just a zillion different causes. But the ARDS caused by the coronavirus, this one, is peculiar because it causes more damage, more loss of the lubricant, the surfactant that the lungs depend on, than other causes of ARDS. So organ failure, which is a typical consequence of prolonged ARDS, is more likely to occur and more likely to occur earlier than other causes like bacterial sepsis. So we're still learning about this,
A long way to go.
I read about it every day, and I learn something new every day. And I think that people who don't have a science background still ought to learn about how you protect yourself.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. This has been very, very helpful. And everybody, please like, subscribe, and share. This is knowledge that everyone needs to know about. Thank you, Doctor. The presentation is brought to you by Via Drinks. Live the Via life. Proactive hydration, low calories, delicious taste. You'll love it. It's fantastic. Overpopulated cities around the world have caused people to become a greedy, selfish, and litigious society. Would you like to be happier, live longer, never be forgotten, and help make the world a kinder, more civil place? It's actually easier than you think. Every day you're asked, "How are you?" Instead of saying good, say, "I am fantastic." It will make you look better, feel great, and reduce your stress. Making the world a better place starts with each person. Please join the Be Fantastic movement today. What you want to be, you can be. Be fantastic.
I met Dr. Fantastic along life's way, and I heard him say, "You are fantastic, yes you are. You are fantastic.